back to another video with your boy, the OG Frenchie. The most OG of all the OGs.
The most OG of all the OGs.
I was just getting ready to shoot a YouTube video on how to make a chef's knife for the first time since I've never made a chef's knife.
Right on, right on. What kind of a chef's knife are you gonna make?
Well, I was thinking about making a French chef's knife.
Do you even know what a French chef's knife is?
No, I really don't exactly know what a French chef's knife is, other than it's long and skinny. Eh?
Long and skinny? Nice. You got jokes. You got jokes.
Yeah, I got jokes. I know, I got jokes. What can I say? I don't even know what a chef's knife is. Do I know what a chef's knife is? A chef's knife? Chef's knife. I'm not a chef, although I am Chef Boyardee sometimes, cooking the raviolis in the microwaves and whatnot. Or Chef Ramen Noodle. Chef Ramen. Call me Chef Ramen. Ramen. Call me Chef Ramen, because I can cut a rug up on some Newmans. I can cut a rug up on some ramen noodles, dog. Because I'll be chopping some ramen noodles with my chef's knives. In fact, I've never made a chef's knife. I've never seen a chef's knife. I've never made one. I've never held one outside of the big box store set that you get in the wooden block that has a chef's knife. Well, in my mind, a chef's knife is a do-it-all style knife that a chef can use to cook. Now, if you get onto the internet and you search chef's knives, you're going to see all kinds of different shapes, sizes, profiles. I don't think there's really one particular style that is well suited for a chef's knife. I could be wrong. But in my mind, a chef's knife should be something that has a tall bevel and at least, let's say 8 inches, maybe 10, maybe 12, I don't know, somewhere around there. So that is all I'm going off of, or really those two things. For today's knife, we're going to be using this big honking son of a gun right here. All right, so I've taken a little bit of time and I have drawn out what I believe to be a good profile for my first chef's knife. It kind of has the straight edge back here, like a traditional French chef's knife. But then I've also included a bit of a belly here towards the end, so that the user, my Aunt Jenny, will be able to do either rocking cuts here towards the end or lift cuts back at the heel of the blade. I'm not really sure which one she would prefer, but hopefully with this profile, she'll be able to choose how she cuts up her ramen noodles. So let's go ahead and get this down onto the metal, and we're going to get it traced out, and we're going to start making this here chef's knife. Let's do it. So that last clip there was grinding in the bevels, or at least one side of the bevel, and thought that that would be a cool shot so that you could see the bevel develop as I'm grinding. Right now we've got one side with our initial 45 degrees put in, and the other side we've done the same thing, but then also ground all the way up, thinking this is going to be a full flat grind on both sides, and the plan is to slightly taper it from thick down to a thinner spine here at the tip of the blade, and that way it'll still be robust back here for chopping thicker things, but it'll also be thin enough to do some fine slicing with the tip. Alright, so I'm out here ready to normalize the blade, and even though I bought this in a pre-annealed condition, I'm still going to run some normalizing cycles. To do that, I've got it in the forge. You saw in the last clip there, I'm using a baffle, which is just some angle iron to cover the top of the blade, and that way the flame is not directly on it. I've also adjusted the settings on the forge. I've closed this down quite a bit, and that way the oxygen that's in there is getting burnt up, so that hopefully will minimize scale buildup. Let's go ahead and check on it and see how it's doing. Alright, so we're starting to get a pretty good color on there. I'll show you the difference between having this setting right and wrong. Right now it's really adjusted pretty well, and even though it's hard to see because there's daylight out here, you can see a lot of the flames coming out of the front, kind of that yellow slow flame. If we were to add oxygen to this, then we'd be adding a lot of oxygen to the flame, and that's what creates a lot of your forge scale and the decarb and all that buildup on the outer layer of the steel that we don't want. So having it up a little higher, you can maybe hear the difference, and if it was darker out here, you'd be able to see the difference, but that is a little bit too much oxygen in there. So we're going to close that back down. Definitely not all the way down, but enough to where it kind of settles itself back down. I feel like that's a really good tip if you're trying to heat treat in a forge. You really want to have the forge set up in the best condition it can be, and for me that's using the adjustment here on the Venturi style burner to limit the amount of oxygen coming in. Now, one thing to note too is it's going to take a little bit longer for the blade to heat up because it's not as hot. Less oxygen is going to mean that the flame is not going to be quite as hot, but it will be a more consistent temperature, and we'll be able to kind of hopefully control the temperature a little bit better. So using the magnet, I know that I'm past critical temperature, which is I think 1300 degrees, somewhere around there. So we want to do our first normalizing cycle at 1600 degrees. So we're going to let it hit that point, which is going to be kind of a bright red or into the stages of maybe a little orange. And then we're going to try to hold that temperature for a few minutes. Sometimes a good way to hold the temperature is to cycle the forge on and off. By turning it off for a second, you still have a lot of heat inside the forge, and the temperature is not rising. It will definitely fall, but it will keep the temperature from getting too hot, which is good. can see, we're still holding a pretty good color. So I'm just going to continue to cycle this on and off for a while until I feel like it's had at least a little bit of a soak time, and try to get it up to that brighter red, which hopefully will be around 1600. And then we'll bring it out, let it air cool. Then we'll do the same thing a couple more times, and each time slightly lowering the temperature. And then after we get it normalized, we're going to bring it back in and apply some clay and attempt to do a HAMON on this blade. So we have a really nice even color. It's not overly hot. This is hopefully what was about 1500 degrees or so. So we'll let this hang out and cool for a little bit, and we'll be ready for our last round. All right, so hopefully those last few clips helped to show kind of the process of normalizing a blade, at least for 1080. Now that it's normalized, what I've done is I've taken it back over here and hand sanded some of this scale off, and really just on the blade portion. And we're going to be applying some stuff to the blade to get a HAMON. Now, something that I've been thinking about is the last HAMON that I did. The very last one that I did was the Viking Sax. Now, I have a pretty good HAMON line on this. You can pretty clearly see it here. Now, it was a little bit higher up on the spine than I'd hoped. I was hoping it'd be in the middle of the bevel, but the point I'm trying to make is that you can clearly see this line. This steel and this steel are the exact same steels, and I'm trying to do the same heat treatment. What I'm thinking of here is this one, I spent forever and a day hand sanding this down to up to 1500 grit before I applied the wire and the clay. And the reason I did that was because I had only attempted one other one, but I had watched several YouTube videos, and everyone that was doing it was saying to bring it up to a super high grit before applying the clay. So I tried following the advice, and it got me a good result. However, in this one, I'm not going to do that. And the reason is I've already ground in the initial bevels, right? And the spine is still pretty thick. And the cutting edge is still, it's thin, but it's still thicker than I want it to be. So if I was to take a bunch of time and hand sand this down, apply the clay, do the heat treat, I would then have to still bring it to the belt grinder because I'm going to be doing a lot of grinding after heat treating. So my thinking is, why would I take all that time to hand sand if I'm just going to be bringing it back to a belt and creating a lot of hard sanding lines? So it's something to think about. I don't really know if there's a way around that, There is, I suppose, if you're doing a thicker style blade like this Viking sax that I did, and the edge is, of course, pretty thin, but it's not going to be as thin as this chef's knife. Now, they probably look similar here in this clip, but looking at them now, they're honestly pretty close. But my intention is to get this knife pretty stinking thin, especially here in the belly. So I'm going to go ahead and forego the hand sanding prior to the HAMON. Let me know if you have experience with doing HAMONs, and in particular on kitchen cutlery where you're trying to make a thin knife. What is the best way to do that? I just don't like hand sanding that much, and I don't really want to do it twice. It takes a lot of time to hand sand something down to get rid of all the scratches, and then it takes even more time after it's hardened. It's much easier to hand sand while the blade is still soft. Not much, but a little bit easier anyway. So, I know that was a lot there, but I wanted to include it in the video because it's not something that I've heard other knife makers talk about. Or maybe I have and I just forgot. I don't know. But if you have experience with that, let me know what your thoughts are on that matter. So, we're going to apply some wire to this. I just use some craft wire. And the reason I use this is just to help the clay stick onto the blade. This does nothing other than that, hoping that it helps the clay stay on there. I'm not using a actual bladesmith clay. What I'm using is this. It's Rutland fireplace mortar. This is really available at a lot of places, and for me, this is pretty easy to get. It says up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I will not be going higher than that. In fact, we'll be well below that. And it's worked for me in the past. So my thoughts are by using the wire and wrapping it around the blade, it helps the clay kind of hang out and hold on to the blade better. So that's what it is. That's what it be. Yeah. I know this last segment was a lot, but for me, it's worth taking the time in the video to explain my thought process and for my own benefit to document things and to share information. You know, maybe at the end of this, I have a wicked sweet blade, and then you'll be able to watch this video and copy the things that I've done to get a good, successful blade. Or I'll make a junker, and my Aunt Jenny will laugh at me. And in that case, don't follow what I've done. But hopefully it's going to be the former and not the latter. So let's go ahead. I'll bring you down and I'll show you the process of applying the wire and the clay. And there's lots of different theories on clay placement to get the line where you want it. You can just smudge a whole bunch around and hope for the best. But we're going to try to very intentionally make some different patterns in here. And I think it has a lot to do with the thickness that you're applying it to, not just where you're whisking it down to, because if you whisk a really thin area, it's really not enough material to insulate the metal. So it's a good combination of where you move the material and how thick it is. So we're going to do a little bit of experimentation with this and see what happens. Let's get it. Okay, so now that it's been about 24 hours, we have the blade ready to go. And the clay is pretty well dry. The instructions say to let it set for 24 hours. And I don't really know what to look for other than the fact that it's pretty hard. And that seems to be pretty consistent with the last couple of times I've used this. So the blade is already normalized and should have a relatively small grain due to the heat treating steps that we just did. So we're ready to quench this thing. It's about 20 degrees out here. It's incredibly cold. So we're going to let this warm up slowly. And we're also going to preheat treat my Parks 50 that I have down here, as it is probably cold. I'll do that by preheating a piece of rebar, and prior to quenching, we'll get the oil warm. Now that you know the game plan, let's go ahead and get this blade hardened. And you can tell that the wire definitely helps to grab onto the clay and keeping it on the blade a little bit. There we go. That's what we got right there. Go ahead and take it in and get it cleaned up a little bit and test for hardness and see where we're at. Okay, so we're back inside. We got this thing cleaned off a little bit. I'm going to take just a normal metal file, and almost instantly you can hear that high-pitched ping sound. Now it's normal to have a little bit of decarb on the edge, and you can tell I'm taking off some of that forged scale with the file. But, oh, that pierces the soul. But you can hear that high-pitched ping sound, which is good. I can already tell that this blade definitely got hard, and yeah, that's pretty successful. I know this was a rather long video, and if you're still watching to this point, it's much appreciated. Thank you. In fact, it's Thanksgiving today, and getting ready to go inside and start cooking a bird. But just wanted to let everyone out there know that I am grateful and thankful for them interacting with me here on the channel. It's been a lot of fun since I've started it, and I've met some really cool people. I wanted to give a couple of shout outs to some of those people that are regular commenters. Some are just normal people that like to watch, and others have their own channels. First off, I'd like to thank Ted at TBW Blades. If you watch my channel, then you know him and I have been interacting and sending each other stuff. He'll send me a Damascus billet, and I sent him some maker's marks, and that sort of thing is really cool. It's just a cool community of people like that that enjoy the craft of knife making or blacksmithing and like interacting with one another. So thank you to Ted. I'm looking at a sheet of paper right by my phone so I don't forget the people that comment regularly, and I might miss some people, and if I do, I really apologize. But we got Ted. Another one that I interact with a lot is Randy. Randy has his own channel. It's Randy Richard in the Shop. He does a lot of just different videos of him in his shop, reviewing different products and just kind of shooting some of the different things that he does. It's a pretty cool channel. Go check him out. Duck Rabbit, him and I have been interacting for a while. He's got a forging channel where he makes knives. RC Knives is another great one. Then we got Stray Wolf Forge. He hops on here to say hey, and he's got some really cool stuff. And Sam Dahl and Son, and I'm not sure I know your name, your first name, but he has a great channel. Much like mine, it's a lot of stuff about knife making, but he talks about the different steps and shows you some of the different processes of what he does. It's really cool to watch someone else do what you do so you can pick up new tips and tricks. So go check him out. And then we've got, let's see, Hunt Trap Fish. That's another great channel. He does a lot of hunting and trapping videos, fishing, but he also made a few knives, I believe, in a couple of his videos, so go check him out. And then there's some other people on here. Kenneth O'Meara, he's always on here saying, hey, thank you, Ken, happy Thanksgiving. We got Stephen B., John Odo, we made him a file knife about 10 or 15 episodes ago. I used to work with him. What's up, John? And then we've got Rock Jock Matt. He always is saying, hey, we've got Newt's Leather and Metal. I forgot to mention him. He's got a channel that does leather stuff. And David is another one. Stephen B., Kenneth O'Meara. Then we've got my brother Jack. He's always saying what's up. My other brother Nick, and my wife likes to get on and comment sometimes. Her name is the OG Frenchie Fan. Yeah, I like it. She's my #1 fan. So thank you to everybody. I know I probably didn't hit every single person, but I'm grateful because I have a lot of people that like to interact with me, and I just wanted to say thank you very much. I know this video's gotten long, so we're going to cut it here. This will be part 1 of making a chef's knife with a HAMON. And hopefully you got some good information out of this video for the next time you want to try your hand at making a blade. In part 2, we'll be jumping into cleaning this up. I'm probably going to temper it before I do the turkey, as we don't want to cook the turkey and the knives in the same oven, although I might have to. We'll see if OG Frenchie Fan is off doing something else. Maybe I can sneak it in there. But if not, then we'll temper, clean it up. We'll get the HAMON line to come out. We'll focus on that in the next episode. And then we'll also be doing a handle for this, and I'll walk through the process and thoughts on putting a handle on what I hope to be a beautiful Christmas gift for my Aunt Jenny. So anyway, much appreciated, guys, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.